Okay, cool. So thanks for joining us again on another episode of Krewe Chats. So far, we've discussed on past episodes the Marketo community, data management, and lead scoring, all of which I'm sure we could talk about even more if we took the time. So if you missed any of those episodes, though, you can still catch them on YouTube or within the Marketo community in the Champ blog area, or if you're watching this on YouTube, they're probably showing up right over here. In any case, we're so glad you came out to join us again. On today's episode, what we want to cover is something a little more strategic and heady, and that's nurture marketing. But before we really get into that, let's take care of a few housekeeping items. First, you can tweet to us using the hashtag #KreweChats. It's just like it's right here, and we'll monitor that as this talk goes on, and then answer any questions that come up. And you can find us on our Twitter handles. Feel free to follow us and message us directly, anything you like. Again, this recording will be available later in the Marketo community, and then also on YouTube. And for as far as we go, my name is Joe Reitz. I'm a strategist at Fathom. And our fun fact for this week is our first car. So my first vehicle, because I grew up in the redneck South, was a pickup truck, a Toyota Tacoma. So not very redneck. Jen, introduce yourself.
Hi. I'm Jen. I, as of 12 o'clock, work nowhere. Today was my last day as a director of marketing at my current job, and on Monday I start as a marketing automation strategist at Rev Engine Marketing. So that's exciting. My first car was a red '96 Volkswagen Jetta that fell apart almost instantaneously upon arrival.
Cool. All right, Jules, you're up.
So, hi everyone, my name's Julie, or Jules. I am an assistant professor at St Edward's University. Fun fact is my first car was a 1962 Volkswagen Beetle in turquoise. It was my baby called Dill. That's
right.
me.
You there, Jeff?
Yes, so I'm Jeff Krajewski. I'm marketing automation specialist and lead Marketo user for PR Newswire, and we are now newly acquired by Cision, so I'm helping with that team as well. My first car was a 1986 Buick Skyhawk wagon.
Wow, you're old.
Yeah, Grandpa Jeff here.
And then for this talk, I brought in a friend and colleague of mine. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Brent.
Cool. Brent Levi. I don't have the overlay because I'm not fast enough and don't know how to use Google Hangouts. But I'm lead strategist at Fathom. My first car was I don't know the year, soft top red Kia Sportage with a hole in the soft top.
Cool. And that's not your fault, Brent. That's me sending you the link 2 minutes before we started. So, with all that said, nurture marketing is a term that really gets bandied about a lot, and as a result, there's a lot of different meanings to a lot of different folks on what exactly that is. So, some people think it's simply drip nurture marketing. Others view it more as a synonymous with Marketo's more robust engagement engine. While yet even some other folks, say the agency type, view it as more of a guiding philosophy to how we just should approach marketing. So on today's episode, what we're going to talk about is what it means to each of us, how we incorporate it into our various marketing strategies or strategies we worked on in the past, and most importantly, try to communicate why you, as a marketer, should also care about nurture marketing. So that summary all aside, let's jump right in. So the first obvious question then that I'll just pose to everybody at large is, what is nurture marketing?
Crickets, so I'll take that. So nurture marketing, one of the best ideas around nurture marketing is that you have a regular touch point with your leads and your clientele. You want to make sure that you have that regular touch point so you don't lose relevancy with them. It also gives your brand the relevance as well. Also, you want to make sure that you are bringing them the proper content at the right point in their buyer's journey. So you're addressing their immediate needs, or rather not their needs, but the problem that they're experiencing.
Cool. Anyone else have anything to add?
I would just say, like, the way that I kind of view it is having a conversation. So, you know, what Jeff said about, you know, reaching the right people at the right time, kind of making sure that you're asking specific questions and providing the right content at, you know, where you've discovered that they are in the buying cycle. So yeah, I view that as like a regular conversation as opposed to like shoving information down people's throats whenever I feel like it.
Cool.
I'll throw my 2 cents in here. Building off of what building off of both of those points, and it doesn't stop once they purchase. It has to continue after that. So continue the conversation, continue talking to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just gets back to the whatever metaphor you want to pick around. You know, you can have a let's go with golf. You can have a great swing, but unless you have a follow through, it just doesn't connect right. The ball doesn't go as far or as straight as it should. Yeah. So the next question we had was kind of, you know, how do you go about making messages more relevant and personalized for your prospects? I.e., what kind of data are you gathering, and what actions do you take with that?
And I don't mind starting with this one. For us in previous roles, it has been all about what actions they're taking on the website. So we actually track what different pages they're going on to, and they get put into certain fields. Also, depending on where they click on the emails. So on a lot of the emails we used to send out, they would have buttons on the bottom of each email that says, I'm interested in this topic, that topic. And if they click on that topic more than once, they would then get moved streams. So they would go from like a generic stream into very specific. Mm-hmm. Which actually saw our open rates and our click-through rates, the click-to-open rate, sorry, go from about 12% up to 50%, because suddenly that we can see that everyone's getting much more relevant content that they want. And again, we would then have a different field in Marketo that said this is their interest, and we had smart lists based on those interests as well, and they would automatically make sure they get pushed into the right streams. That was, I don't know if that's a basic way of doing it, but that was one of the ways we used to do it for both companies where I use Marketo.
Sure. Anyone else? How do you make messages more relevant and personalized?
One thing that doesn't necessarily work for all companies, but it can be valuable if you can get the buy-in, is talk to your sales team. If you can get your sales team to actually capture what they're talking about and make it somewhat standardized, it's a resource that, as great as digital is, you can't beat an in-person conversation. So any ability to capture that information is second to none.
I think also coming off the back of that, we had in Salesforce, we had 2 different fields. One was area of focus and area of interest. So area of focus, we could pick 2 or 3 topics. Area of interest, we could the sales guys could free text whatever they wanted in there, and we would then go and search, again in the smart list, search for what interests there were. So having the sales guys actually, when they do the phone calls, our business development team, when they make the phone calls of what are they interested in, what product are they interested in, what area of focus do they have, that would then push them into the correct nurture streams. But yeah, having that two-way conversation is what makes the difference.
So product interest is a great point there, Julie. One of the other things that I want to mention is creating personas around your audience, because personas is something that's missed by a lot of people or not done in an effective manner. Most companies or organizations will have a certain number of stock personas, but for my example, I'm in the PR world and the agencies around getting their messages out there on the wire. So for us, we actually have over 40 personas, and it's a combination of both persona and the type of company that the people are with. and therefore we're able to really target the message in a more effective manner to those people, again, at which point in the life cycle they're in, whether it's before signing on with us or it's after they're already a customer and then they're in what we call the life cycle model.
Yeah, and I want to come back to that in a second, but because you touched on a few good, really potentially deep segues around personas and different kind of tracks. So before we go down that rabbit hole a little bit, what has been your experience trying to sell nurture marketing to a sales team? Like, it's obviously a very different kind of approach from, like, old world thinking of, a lot of the nurturing that we do via email, a lot of that, conversational credibility building stuff, that's traditionally been the job of the average sales rep. So how has been y'all's experience around, like, a sales team when they get nurture marketing, either given to them or foisted on them? Like, what has been everyone's experience of shifting the mindset from, marketing is just blasting people with messages versus marketing is now intelligently, trying to nurture?
I've seen it both ways for me. So I've seen salespeople get really excited about it because if I'm maintaining contact with these people for them, as long as the salesperson can see the messaging that's going out and they can see, like, exactly what's been touching their prospect or customer, they get really excited that I'm the one helping maintain that relationship and they're not doing it on their own. I've also seen it go other ways where they're kind of just like, get your hands out of my pot.
So in that case, though, like, how have you addressed or overcome that kind of salesperson? Because I think we've all dealt with that person at some point or another.
Education, showing them exactly what type of content you would do. I've created flowcharts in the past, like, okay, so if this happens, they'll go here. Telling them that I can set up alerts for certain actions. So, okay, if we think this guy's not interested anymore, yeah, we'll unsubscribe him or get him out of this funnel, or you can reach out and just take him out, or even use MSI to suspend him for a couple weeks until you feel more comfortable with it.
Let's take that a step further then. Like, what about the guy that doesn't listen to anything you have to say about nurture marketing and just says, no, I want to make sure he's unsubscribed from everything. This is my deal. I want marketing to stay out of it. What would be your reaction in that case?
I have dealt with that. At first, I kind of backed off and I was like, okay. But then they would start seeing success with the other salespeople, and eventually they would either come back to me about it or I could approach them and show them, the statistics. I worked very closely with a demand gen person who would actually call and follow up with these people, and she was able to get me, statistics on how many more she was able to pass to sales anytime, like, they would call in, or how much additional contact she would have as a result of that. And so usually once you get numbers around it, they're a little more willing to listen.
Yes, that's my favorite way to bake a humble pie.
Yes.
Cool. All right, so now, because Jeff got a little ahead of me because he's wildly insightful, wanted to talk a little bit more about, like, the overall nurture marketing as a part of your strategy and plan. So, like, tell me a little bit, and we can just kind of go around the panel of, like, the strategy you're either most proud of or you feel like is, like, just a great example of awesome nurture marketing. Tell me a little bit about, like, what that process was. Was it aligned to the sales funnel or the sales cycle, or something else? Like, I know there's a lot of different like fast train versus slow train. We can kind of dig into those a little bit, but let's go around for a second and just kind of share a high-level overview of some of our favorite strategies with nurture marketing.
So one of the beauties is it's an ever-moving target. You can always optimize it, and therefore you don't have to settle on just one, put the stick in the mud and there you go. It's the stick drawing a line, and you cross that line, and then further down you find that you need to revise the path that you're taking. So a lot of times what the best recommendations that come out of the agencies, as well as from the strategists in big companies, they'll say you got to start with your audience and your content, and from there, you need to define a certain set of personas, as I mentioned earlier. Now, personas, usually you want to use a combination of the person's role and the type of company to build those personas. For example, someone that is a CEO at a Fortune 500 company or a publicly traded company, these are sometimes bigger targets because they're a bigger company and have more bucks to spend. One of the other things, as I mentioned, is content. So your content, you want to make sure you're targeting, and there's the concepts of the funnel. So the end of the funnel, of course, is when you close the deal, and then there is the life cycle or the cross or upsell options afterwards. But you want to make sure that when you're targeting an initial prospect, that you're using the concepts of top of the funnel, middle funnel, and the end stages of the funnel are usually after sales is already engaged and there's an opportunity identified.
How about you, Brent? I know for a fact you've dealt with some pretty cool ones recently.
Yeah, so I think speaking in general terms, my favorite type of strategy or my favorite situation to be in, and obviously in an agency you play at different levels and different roles, and you rarely get to see something be 100% complete in terms of where you started to 10 years down the line and how it's evolved. But my favorite approach or my favorite type is when we come into a client that just doesn't have anything. Either their data set is completely horrible and you can't trust anything in it, which happens, or they just don't have data. They haven't been collecting it or whatever. And taking that, I don't have a cool name for it, but that quick to start approach where you start with something and you can't define a persona because you don't know, and you can take the theoretical mind, but what's more valuable, something in a month or something 4 months down the line? So starting with something, collecting data, and working towards that ultimate point. That's always my favorite approach. It's always chaotic, it's always fast-paced, and it always keeps moving, and the target somewhat changes, but it's fun and stressful.
What's the that mantra we heard a couple last week or something like that? It was around incremental changes move the needle, or it was something more profound than that, but it was something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't know that. I can't remember those things, but something close to that.
Yeah.
As the old adage goes, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Rum wasn't built in a day?
Rome.
Yeah, rum takes longer than a day too. I know that for true.
I know it's Friday afternoon, Joe.
How about you, Jen?
So I guess kind of going off those lines, something that I see frequently is just people don't really know where to start with it. So I like to keep it simple, and I like to work with sales really closely when I'm doing it because I try to get them involved at the different stages of it as well, whether it's picking up the phone at some point or sending something, what have you. But my favorite approach to that is when you're keeping it simple to, in your first touch maybe, especially if it's not the warmest list that you could have to send to, is to put in a really strong call to action, and then you get people who are more toward the end of the funnel who might be ready to buy or speak with sales or something out of there, and then that keeps sales happy and busy, and then they can go do their own thing, and then you can focus on the other aspects of the funnel and content and the targets as well.
Yeah. All right, Jules, you're last up.
Oh, great. I mean, looking at the strategies that we've used or we've employed in Marketo is we always use a buyer's journey. So we have the buyer's persona, we have a buyer's journey, and that buyer's journey always aligns with our sales strategy. It may not be called the same thing, which is the one thing that we are trying to do. but I always used the old kind of slightly old school of AIDA, so awareness, interest, desire, action, and move them through those different buyer stages and give them the right content at the different types of stages that they're at. So if they're just awareness stage, don't give them a 62-page data sheet about a specific project. Give them something a lot lighter, an infographic, a blog post, something like that, and then you start to see them move through that journey, and then you start to see the drop-off rates. And it's exactly the same when we have an opportunity created in Salesforce, is if you went in straight away and rang them up and said, do you want a meeting straight away? What's your budget? When can you purchase? They're not gonna come in. They're not gonna say they want a meeting. They're gonna just be completely turned off by you and want to go somewhere else.
Right.
So it's always start off, like Jen said, start off with that light approach, but make sure there's a decent call to action in there, and then you just get better content, more interesting content as you work through that funnel. And once you get down to that awareness stage, to be honest, we don't have many people at the awareness stage, but because by the time they're at desire, they've already having phone calls with our sales guys and our business development team, because we know that that's the point that they're interested in. That's the point where they actually pick up the phone to us or drop us an email or send a contact form or a demo request to us. And that really works. It's taken a while to get both companies that I've used this for to understand the reasoning behind it, but when they start to see that actually give it a little while and people do start picking up the phone to us, it makes all that difference.
Yeah, totally. I guess it's too good of a question for me not to throw in my own 2 cents. But I kind of agree with Brent. Like, when you get to do something fresh, and it's so easy to see value, and it's easy to create value quickly. One of the ones, though, that I didn't think would be as enjoyable as it has been recently is working on a client that they have tons of data. They have an instance set up and running, but really trying to take, really creating there's one thing where you have an instance, and there's another where you have a strategy driving the instance. And in some cases I've seen where, like, even in my own past experience, we had an excellent content strategy, but beyond generating MQLs based on interaction with content, there was nothing else to happen. I mean, there was no, there's a handoff to sales, like, hey, we think this person might be sales ready, but it was based on, a lot of educational kind of top of funnel stuff. So one of the more interesting approaches that I've had recently is building out a more full funnel approach where another colleague of ours says it's the funnel, but then it also goes out. Again, going back to Brent's earlier comment of follow through. But that guy's name is also Brent, so you can imagine how confusing it is to be in the Fathom Chicago office. But what it essentially is like, mapping of that buyer journey. Like, I think basically all of you touched on was wherever they are in this cycle, we'll put them, we'll have top of funnel type content, we'll have
Joe randomly stop talking.
Yeah.
He was just getting to the good stuff, too.
I know. Joe just crashed. He should be back in a second. Oh, do you want to move on to the next?
Yeah.
The next bit while we wait for him. So, have you noticed your brand voice changing with nurture marketing? So, is the content that we're sending out less salesy, more educational? Is it less promotional and more useful content? And are we finding that the content we're sending out is much more conversational?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's less buy now and more like, okay, so here's the problem that you're probably having. Are you having this problem? Click here or tell us more about it or something. Something that I like too is that when you get into those conversations, you can use that to create even more content for your funnel, which is another benefit of actually talking to people instead of selling to them.
Yeah,
hey guys.
Welcome back. Sorry, where you gone?
Where did I drop out? I was making some excellent points.
Meh.
Like right at the beginning?
Yeah, basically.
That hurts. Yeah, I mean, basically what I was saying, without just derailing the conversation you guys have had so far, was a more full funnel approach has been one of the most satisfying experiences for me from a strategy standpoint. Taking something that, taking an instance that has content and has, programs in it, but now mapping a strategy that goes along with the buyer's journey that we can push them forward or cycle them back based on activity or inactivity or whatever else we need to make sure that we're positioning the right content at the right time. And it's always going to be a best guess, but at least we have created inlets and outlets for making best guess, really good, educated guesses along the way. That's going to lead with more leads actually flowing through the whole funnel. So, I'm done.
So I was just going to mention, I know, Jules, we moved on to the question, the fifth area that we're covering today for brand voice and the change. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that as you look at certain portions of the user's journey, top of funnel, mid funnel, etc., when you're in the early stages, again, you don't want to be talking about your specific product, your specific solution to their problem. You want to identify and have thought leadership around that area, and then from there you can start to introduce some of the concepts surrounding your particular product or platform that you may be able to offer. And you don't want to do that until that person is at least engaged up to a certain point, has certain scores that they've attained, and you know that they progressed to a certain point where you would want to introduce that concept in your own product.
Okay, so because I dropped off, did anyone else already answer other than Jeff?
Jen did, and so yeah, it was just asking about the voice. So Brant or Joe, you got any suggestions? What type of content?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen in the past where going from less salesy and promotional to be more a lot more educational. I mean, that's the main example that I've run into is, we don't want our in one of my past jobs, we didn't want our emails to be transactional or salesy. We didn't want to just batch and blast with, hey, do this, and be very kind of spammy, or not spammy, but just not on target. Like, we wanted to be. My approach to nurture marketing was like my approach to dating. Like, no one wanted to sit down and have a meal with a guy that talked about himself for 2 hours. They wanted to have someone that was actually really interested and engaged in their needs. And that to me is like the most perfect way to sum up nurture marketing. So like when we implemented it at this company, that was kind of our guiding mantra of like, hey, is this likely to make our date more likely to be friendly towards us? And if the answer was yes, then we did it. If the answer was no, then we kind of thought on it a little more and made it more conversational, I guess, would be the thing. Always trying to get at what their needs are, what their interests are, and trying to suss that out with data and interaction versus just, taking a guess and blasting somebody.
Yeah, Joe, you hit on a good point. I don't delve into messaging. That's not my strength. But one thing that's super valuable is anytime you can gather something. So speaking to like what do they want to see at each stage, anytime you can say, basically have your subscriber, have your target say, hey, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I care about, it changes your voice a lot towards that person. It can help inform other conversations down the road.
And that touches on a good point too, is that your customer is not always interested in what you have outbound. You want to make sure that you're integrated in a multi-channel approach, which I'm sure we'll touch on in a later Krewe Chat. But we want to make sure, as we're structuring our campaigns, that it's not just your website, your inbound targeting. You want to make sure that you do have that multi-channel approach. You're going out to the channels where they are and putting that content in front of them, because you'll only exponentially get returns upon that when you do so.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are at time, so I want to be respectful of everybody's schedules. But thanks again for joining us on Krewe Chats. I've been Joe Reitz, and we have, in order, Brent Levi, lead strategist at Fathom. Jeff Krajewski, PR Newswire. I'm sorry, I don't know everyone's full titles, so I'm going to butcher this. Jen DiMaria, who is the newest and greatest marketer over at Rev Engine Marketing, and now we are sworn enemies, so we can't be friends anymore.
Right. There will be blood.
And then Julie James, who is now at what university?
St. Edward's University in Austin, Texas.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So thanks for joining us again on this episode of Krewe Chats. We'll be back in a couple weeks. We've got a couple more topics in mind right now. I'm not sure which will be our next. Potentially workspaces and partitions, I think, might be one of the next ones coming up. So it's been great. We'll talk to you guys soon.